be sure to check out my latest graphic novel, The Displacer, only on Indiegogo.
What's up, everybody? Noble Comics here, stuck at the train right now. But I had some thoughts I wanted to talk about, mainly about DC Black Label. So if you don't know, since about 2018, DC has been putting out comics on their, it's kind of like an imprint at this point of Black Label, which is books that are sort of aimed at a more mature audience, and they got a few different things going on for them that I want to talk about of why I think they're so successful and why I think it's a good idea. One of the few really good ideas that the comic industry, American comic book industry, has come out with in a while. If you watched my video on One Piece beating DC Comics' Batman, like, you know, the entire history of Batman sales, One Piece beat it a few years ago. It's like 500 million total copies sold. And despite only being created in like the 90s, already beat like 80 years of Batman. And I cited a few reasons for that, being, for example, non-complete stories. Like with Batman, you have, it's issue by issue, but there's no resolution to Batman's character. There's certain artists and writers may have their own arc, but then the next artist-writer team takes over, pretty much resets their arc to zero, and does their own Batman story from there. So Batman never ends. We've had 80 years of Batman, but the character has never had a conclusion, or really much change. As far as, like, the character Batman is changed. And that's true for most American superheroes. So, with DC Black Label, we've sort of seen this problem have a creative response from the American comic industry, which has just been shorter stories pretty much. So the way Black Label works, if you don't know, is, like I said, it's aimed at more mature audiences. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's also a larger size comic book than a typical like floppy comic. So it's a larger size, a little bit more expensive. They're like square bound, even though they're still pretty small. They're not like a full graphic novel. They're bigger than a single issue. And so what they do is they get like real professionals. They don't get like all these new guys who are inexperienced and stuff like that. That I think that a lot of Marvel comics suffer from, is having kind of talentless people or new people who are just willing to work cheap. A lot of the pros have kind of left. But Black Label is hiring a lot of these pros to do little mini-series. I think recently they had, like, Mark Silvestri is doing a Batman series, which is awesome. But stuff like that, they'll get, like, actual pros to come back and do a little mini-series. And what I like about it is, like I said, you're getting a little bit more per issue than a standard comic issue, with not as much of a price increase as if you were buying like 2 issues or something like that of a typical comic. They're like $6 or $7 per issue, versus a typical DC Comics already like $4 or $5. So you definitely pay more, but the quality is better. It's better writing. It's better art. Like there was like the Batman Smile Killer. There was the Batman 3 Joker story. They did a lot of the Sean Gordon Murphy's White Knight Batman verse. And, like, you can probably tell by how I'm describing this. It's mostly Batman stuff, because it's supposed to be a bit more edgy, grown up and dark. It's pretty much Batman stuff. Though they boast that they do, like, Superman and Wonder Woman and all this stuff. And I think there are Superman and Wonder Woman books. And there's a few other, like, series that are underneath the Black Label banner. Like I said, there was the Sean Gordon Murphy verse. There was one other big one in there. I can't remember. But most of it's Batman stuff, and most of it's pretty good. So quality-wise, it's better than most other DC or Marvel stuff. But the main thing that I think they get right is that they do these mini-series. They're 3-issue, 6-issue. I've seen maybe one 12-issue one, which is pretty rare. But it's like 3 issues. You know, maybe 100 pages total of a complete story. It's a complete Batman story. And it may not be totally in canon with the rest of the stuff, which is fine in my opinion. But it's a satisfying conclusion. And that's what's kind of been missing from a lot of American comic books. Is you've had Spider-Man, who's a great example of this, has had thousands of issues over his lifespan from the 60s. He's gone from high school kid to college kid to getting married to back to a high school kid, back to a college kid, to joining the Avengers, to joining the Fantastic Four. Then we reset him, he's a high school kid again. It's just this endless cycle. That character gets married, then he's no longer married, and then this, that, it never has a conclusion. Even if the arc of Spider-Man for a certain writer has a conclusion, maybe there's 150 issues that one writer did, and it ends. Well, it's just going to pick up again with the next writer and artist, because they want to tell their Spider-Man story, and they're just going to reset everything that happened. That was kind of true with that Daredevil series. Started in 2015. It was really good. That ran for like 3 years, something like that. And then it got picked up by Chris Zdarsky. And he did continue it from the end, but within a few issues, he just made it his own story. When that Daredevil story had a really good conclusion to the character, in my opinion. Same thing with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman. I think had a really solid conclusion to the character. But you can't let these characters go. They're corporate characters. But something like One Piece, something like Bleach, something like Chainsaw Man, all this stuff, One Punch Man, it's all just one story from one writer, one artist usually. Maybe there's, over time, a different artist takes over. But it's the same story that has a definite conclusion, has a definite end. Every single issue is connected. And one day it's going to be over. One day there's going to be no more One Piece comics. One day there's going to be no more Bleach comics. I think the Bleach already ended, but I thought maybe it was making a comeback. I don't remember. But it gives this conclusion that American readers don't ever get. And so it's like, dude, I can only read so many Batman Joker stories. You know? Like Black Label, I'm saying I like Black Label a lot. But even then, everybody wants to do their own Batman Joker story. It's like, I get it, man. I get it. Batman and Joker don't like each other. And I would just like to see some sort of definite conclusion to these characters, which will never happen. Anytime that they've tried it, which Marvel, to slight credit of Marvel, they've kind of tried it. I see that with Jane Foster Thor, maybe with Ironheart, with Sam Wilson's Captain America, with kind of the Miles Morales Spider-Man. But you can see a trend here, is instead of retiring a character, they just pass on the mantle and then pretty much disrespect the source character, which is not how you retire a character. Like, you could pass off Batman to Robin, and maybe like Damian Wayne becomes the new Batman. You could do that pretty smooth without disrespecting Bruce Wayne. If you want to end his character, you totally could. But of course, the other issue with why you can't do that these anime don't have, is Batman's connected to Superman and this entire DC universe. So if you want Batman to be 60 years old and retire his character and pass the mantle on to Damian Wayne, well, now Superman has to be 60, and Wonder Woman has to be 60, and everybody gets aged up. So it's just not possible unless the entire universe is on board with moving forward and getting rid of these characters. But that's the main DC lineup. However, again, this is where Black Label, I think, really shines. Take the Murphyverse that I've been talking about. Does a great job of this. It's possible for these guys, let them do some Elseworld stories that give definite conclusions, at least be an option. In the future, I would like for everybody to move towards the DC Black Label model. Short stories. They don't even have to be short. In this context, they kind of do because of this corporate character stuff I've been talking about. But these definite stories, maybe they're fewer in number. Maybe they are only once a month they come out. But they're short stories. They're complete stories. They've got a lot of talent behind them at a slightly higher price. I think that's totally justified and a great business model. if we did that going forward for every character, like we said from here on out, this is going to be the final arc of these characters, that would totally increase sales like crazy. The final Spider-Man, the final Wolverine, the final Batman, Superman, whatever. We're going to do these very high quality, maybe a little bit more scarce, but full story endings to these characters. I think that'd be awesome, and I'm totally all for it. And you might be wondering, like, after that, what do? And I say, man, just make some new characters. You know, there's been 10 billion Batman stories. We can try something new. Will it ever happen? No. Will this trend of these type of stories catch on? Maybe. I'd like to see that more. So that's kind of my hope, is that we can move forward in this direction of more complete stories. They don't got to be 500 issues long. Give me a 6-issue miniseries, and have it be really good. Lots of talent behind it, and I think that's better than 100 issues of mediocrity that just gets reset 6 months later. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about. That's why I think that DC Black Label has been a success. I think it's a really good idea. I'd like to see more of it. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you in the next video.